Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Heriyanto and I'm from class 3B. So today I want to talk about study abroad's contribution to critical thinking and world citizenship. So this paper articulates and defends two these two theses due to Richard Paul and Linda Elder. First, creative thought and critical thought cannot be separated. Second, the intellectual traits constitutive of critical thinking are interdependent. The twin theses combined with certain impacts. Studies show that study abroad enhances both creativity and criticality. The primary value of such gains resides in their potential to realize not only the Socratic ideal of rationality, but also the Diogenean ideal of cosmopolitanism. The former consists in the cultivation of fair-minded, creative, and critical individuals and societies, whereas the latter consists in the cultivation of citizens of the world and the single community to which they belong. Since study abroad can lead to intellectual growth in participants, this paper recommends certain policies and practices to help ensure the desired gain. The benefits of study abroad. Study abroad is typically described as life-changing, a defining moment, or so participants say. Study abroad helps shape a participant's life for years after the experience. In 2002, the Institute of the International Education of Students, or EIS, conducted the largest survey of study abroad alumni ever. The EIS Abroad 50-year alumni survey confirms that the long-term impact of study abroad on a participant's personal, academic, and professional life. The impact study when asked about the personal development, 96% said study abroad increased their self-confidence, 97% said it enhanced their maturity, 89% said it empowered them to tolerate ambiguity, and 84% said it caused them to modify their socio-political positions. When questioned about intercultural development, 98% said study abroad expanded their understanding of their own cultural values and biases. When queried about the academic commitment, 80% said study abroad raised their interest in academic study. When asked about the career developments, 62% said study abroad triggered an interest in a career direction pursued. Thereafter, 76% said it enabled them to acquire skill sets that influenced their career path. Beyond the cultural and linguistic benefits, how reliable are the self-report data, given the temptation to over-report good behavior and under-report bad behavior? Could the high percentage of survey respondents who claim to have been positively transformed by their study abroad experience can be artifact of social desirability? Bias, while such a possibility cannot be ruled out, is yet to be established. Besides, a number of studies exist that employ objective measurements tools such as pre-test and post-test of specific skills and confirm in advantage of study abroad beyond the cultural linguistic benefits. Consider the improvement of creative thinking and communication skills. Tracy Runstone Williams shows that students who study abroad generally demonstrate a greater increase in intercultural communication skills after their time abroad than students who stay on campus. Stronger results have been obtained. Irving Clark III, ETAL, show that students who participate in study abroad not only improve their intercultural communication skills to a greater degree than those who do not, but also but also achieve a significantly higher level of intercultural communication after the experience than their stay-at-home counterparts. Finally, living abroad has been found to boost creativity. In a series of 5 studies, William W. Maddox and Adam D. Galinsky discovered a robust correlation between living overseas and enhanced creativity, identifying adaptation as the critical mechanism that underlies this linkage. They hypothesized thus adaptation may be the key psychological element that explains why living abroad is associated with creativity, because culture is such a pervasive force impacting and shaping every aspect of one's life. Adapting oneself to a new culture, learning how to behave and think in a different way, make indi- make individuals chronically aware of multiple perspectives and approaches when dealing with mundane and novel situations. While traveling overseas might not enhance creativity, living in a foreign land and adapting to a new culture would insofar as study. eh, While traveling overseas might not enhance creativity, living in a foreign land and adapting to a new culture would. Insofar as study abroad augments the chance of cultural adaptation, participants are poised to gain from enhanced creativity. The inseparability of creativity and criticality. Study abroad promotes the development of not only but creative thinking but also critical thinking for 2 reasons. First, according to the commonly accepted model of critical thinking developed by Richard Paul and Linda Elder, creative thinking and critical thinking are so interwoven that neither can be separated from the other without essential loss to both. Second, in line with the Paul Elder model, certain traits of mind, the growth of several of which study abroad has been shown to advance, constitute critical thinking, and the traits are interdependent, such that the acquisition, possession, retention, employment, development, and enrichment of one requires the same of others, and our critical thinking will be compromised if we are severely lacking in any of these traits. Because of the inseparability of creative thought and critical thought, as well as the interdependence of the intellectual traits constitutive of critical thinking, to the extent that study abroad promotes the development of creative thinking and constitutive traits such as intellectual humility and intellectual empathy, study abroad promotes the development of critical thinking. Consider the inseparability of creativity and criticality thinking. Whether creative or critical is a cognitive achievement, something which the mind must work to attain. Creative thinking involves a process of making of making or constructing, whereas critical thinking involves a process of judging or assessing. When engaged in sound thinking, especially in a self-reflective manner, one cannot help performing the creative and critical functions simultaneously. A mature mind cannot form high-quality thoughts without ascertaining their worth, and such ascertaining includes a critical component. Nor can it provide well-reasoned critics asking creative effort, because it has to envision alternative possibilities and craft the analysis and interpretations involved. To produce is to appraise, to evaluate is to generate. Creativity thus requires criticality and vice versa. Overlapping and interacting with each other, they are integrated and inseparable aspects of excellence of thought. Insofar, The, the creative thinking implies an improvement in critical thinking. Some might oppose the inseparability thesis because it fails to delineate important distinctions and ultimately conflates two different ways of thinking. Opponents may invoke the following passage to justify their stance. Whereas creative thinking is divergent, critical thinking is convergent. Whereas creative thinking tries to create something new, critical thinking seeks to assess worthy or validity in something that exists, whereas creative thinking is carried on by violating accepted principles. Critical thinking is carried on by applying accepted principles. Although creative and critical thinking may very well be different sides of the same coin, they are not identical. They are sorry. The cultivation of critical thinking. Study abroad spurs the growth of several intellectual traits. Recall the IIS survey. Firstly, 98% said study abroad expanded their understanding of their own cultural biases, and 82% said it helped them develop a more sophisticated way of looking at the world. Secondly, 84% said it caused them to modify their socio-political positions, and 64% said it encouraged them to explore other cultures. Thirdly, 89% said it empowered them to tolerate ambiguity, and 90% said it inspired them to cultivate a more diverse circle of friends. Fourthly, 86% said it strengthened their commitment to foreign language study, and 64% said it influenced their decisions to attend graduate school. This body of evidence shows that study abroad furthers the development of intellectual humility, intellectual courage, intellectual empathy, and intellectual perseverance, respectively. A few modest proposals. I would like to conclude that with three schematic proposals for ensuring intellectual growth in study abroad students. First, study abroad, while not inexpensive, fosters the development of informed critical and creative thinkers who communicate effectively, to borrow a signature phrase from my university's quality enhancement plan. Since such development is crucial at all levels of education, subject to the relevant budgetary constraints, study abroad ought to be part of any significant institutional effort to promote critical and creative thinking. Second, considering adaptation is the critical mechanism that underlies the robust correlation between living overseas and enhanced creativity, study abroad programs ought to be structured in such a way to increase participants' chances of adapting to the host country's culture. If participants from a hermetic community in which they live and interact primarily with others from their own culture, they may fail to take full advantage of the opportunity to improve their creative and thus critical thinking. Conversely, host institutions ought to make every effort to help visiting international students, scholars, and their families adapt to their local culture, so that all stand to gain from enhanced creativity and criticality. Third, in a recent study, Joshua S. McCown observes no president, provost, dean, or study abroad director would discourage the expansion of studying abroad on her or his campus, with most actively encouraging it. Yet, the kinds of inquiry and assessment that typically accompany first-year programs, academic curricula, living, learning, communities, and other campus programs have largely been absent from study abroad. To rectify this situation, there ought to be a concerted institutional effort to initiate and pursue similar kinds of inquiry and assessment for study abroad. So, what I just talked about is about study abroad's contribution to critical thinking and world citizenship. I hope you guys can learn from what I speak. So thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.